more courageous.
Okay, well, who do you rate highest of your new friends?
That would be telling.
I was asking.
Not telling you, sweetie. You wouldn't know their names, but I mean, they are people in Iraq and Afghanistan and elsewhere who are on, I won't say on my side, who are on our side, on the side of civilization against barbarism and theocracy. They're worth knowing. It's been a wonderful thing in my life to find them and count them as friends. It's a matter of elementary internationalist, socialist solidarity to me. To be on their side and on the side of their long-oppressed women folk. Actually, I will give you a couple of examples. It seems to me that the three most beautiful words in the secular language now are Ayaan Hirsi Ali, who's become a great friend of mine, and who's that's better, and who has been through rape, genital mutilation, forced marriage to a relative or close to a relative, beaten, brutally treated, exiled, and so on, and who genuinely considers herself to be a lucky person because she's probably the only survivor of her class in Somalia who's still alive, and who witnesses for the most important thing of all in this combat, which is the rights of women, and the empowerment of women is the only cure we know to poverty and deprivation. And just being able to find myself a friend of hers and speak up for her and say a few words in her behalf is I tell you, is worth a lot of disapproving gazes from Michael Moore, say, who is, of course, also very beautiful in his own way.
You obviously, you know, your stance is on Islamofascism, which I think you claim to you've coined.
Well, not quite. I mean, when I wrote my reaction piece to 9/11, I said it's fascism with an Islamic face, which is a borrowing that some of the older comrades here will remember from what Alexander Dubček said about socialism with a human face in Czechoslovakia, and what Susan Sontag said at a very famous meeting in solidarity with Poland in 1982, that the military dictatorship in Poland was fascism with a human face. But you can't say fascism with an Islamic face every single time. So, and anyway, not everyone's going to get the reference every single time. So it got a bit compressed into Islamofascism, which doesn't quite have the same resonance. But there we are. We need a word for it.
But you've written, as I say, very publicly, and everyone knows the kind of the changes or the perceived changes in your position on these things and supporting the war in Iraq. You've also written at great length and fantastically about the founding fathers, and in particular Jefferson. Does it trouble you that even if you obviously felt you're on the right side of the argument in relation to Iraq, that some of the ways in which that conflict has been prosecuted, and in particular long-term detention without trial, that in fact you can be on the right side of an argument but still potentially fundamentally undermine the values which define a nation?
Yeah, you can. I mean, I remember going to Abu Ghraib not long after the liberation of Baghdad, and where I divide people, by the way, between those who knew about Abu Ghraib before 2003 and those who walk around as if it was a prison opened by the United States for its own purposes after 2003. If you didn't know about Abu Ghraib before 2003, be very modest in what you say about it. But it was a place where at one point it was an industrial execution shed and torture chamber where hundreds of people were hanged every day, often from the same beam at the same time. And where, when it became overcrowded and the numbers needed to be culled, the guards would go out with the list of names around Baghdad and go to the families and say, we can keep your son off the list for execution if you give us 1,000 dinars and so on. Impossible to deepen the night, the sort of the pornographic element of the Saddam Hussein regime. And the smell of the place when it was broken open is with me still. And I remember saying to the people I was with, don't use this anymore. Don't try and convert it into a prison. This place needs fire from heaven. It should just be blown up, and salt should be sown in the ruins. Don't try and use it. It's evil. I actually think evil is a word you have to use. You can't do without it. And evil has a particular stench, and I can personally claim to have smelled it, winded it, scented it. Anyway, no one listens to me. I often think that's, a lot of what's wrong. And they ignored me. And the place did become a nightmare. Nothing like on the same scale. I won't even have that suggested. Prison conditions in Iraq have vastly improved since the arrival of the coalition forces. Anyone who doesn't know that is a fool. But recreational torture on video, these people. And I wrote and I said and I believe that it didn't change my attitude towards torture. I mean, I've been waterboarded because I wanted to find out what it was like. I thought the main contribution I could make was to see, well, is this torture or not? Yes, it is. Didn't change my attitude towards torture. It very nearly changed my attitude towards capital punishment. I thought the people who did that in Abu Ghraib should have been taken out and shot. I would have protested against it eventually if they were put up against the wall, but I wouldn't have had my heart completely in it. It would have been nice to have them shot out of hand. Well, a brief and fair trial, but then shot out of hand.
So how long did you last in the waterboarding? I've seen the footage, but
No, you have. Well, not very long the first time, because everything in you reacts to the sensation of being drowned. By the way, you read in the newspapers, it mimics the sensation of being drowned. It's not at all that. You are being drowned, except slowly. So your whole body goes into a spasm of resistance to this, and time has no meaning at all. But when I looked at the clock, I thought, Jesus, no son of Commander Hitchens should have wimped out as fast as that. So I asked them to do it again. I lasted a few more seconds, but the point was pretty easily made by then. And for quite a long time afterwards, I shouldn't say post-traumatic stress disorder, because many honorable warriors who've been through much worse than that have had that, but I did have very bad nightmares, which I never had nightmares, and I kept all the time thinking that I was being choked and was drowning. It didn't go away for quite a long time.
So that's waterboarding. How do you think you'd go with whiskey boarding?
Well, the guy goes into a bar, says, "I'd like a glass of James Walker, please." Barman says, "You mean Johnny, don't you?" Said, "Not when you know him as well as I did." People are constantly surprised by this, but I can actually take a drink and manage it, handle it, carry on apparently ambulant.
I think it's actually one of the stronger arguments against atheism. I believe your liver is a miracle.
People come from far and wide, yeah. I have some advice for boozers in my book. I mean, the thing is, don't mix, very important. Try not to drink on an empty stomach, drink plenty of water, dance with the one that brung you, all that kind of thing. And don't use it to cure the blues, for example. That would
Do you speak from experience there?
No, except indirect. My father was someone who was a pessimist and would, in a morose way, drink, and it would only make him more morose. Whereas I'm, even War says about Charles Ryder, or Charles Ryder says of himself, rather, in Brideshead Revisited, that he drank for love of the moment and to prolong and to enhance it. And that's what I do. If the dinner party's going well, I want it to go on longer and louder, and for my own part in it to be more prominent and so forth. But if you drank because you had the blues, you'd be in big trouble. And then never say that I don't remember last night, because you do. Some hostesses will accept this excuse, but they shouldn't. Or rather, if you really don't remember, then you're in terrible trouble.
And has that happened to you often?
No, I have no amnesia at all. It's a quote from the same novel when Anthony Blanche says, "I left school under a cloud," and he pauses and said, "Why do they call it that? It seemed to me like a shaft of the most unwelcome light." No, if I was embarrassing to anyone or for any reason, which I don't necessarily confess that I was or am the night before, the problem would be you'd remember